friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
Welcome, friends, readers, listeners, and viewers from across America and around the world. This is your host, Zen Garcia, Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. And as always, we do greatly appreciate your patronage and for taking the time to join us in live broadcast. We are streaming out of the East Coast, United States of America, near Athens, Georgia, and I will be this evening joined by my son, Justin James Garcia, and we will be starting a new monthly series, uh, basically about current events and prophecy in the news. And so, Justin, are you there, son?
I am. Thank you for having me. And it is the start of a new series. We're really excited on the last Wednesday of every month that we get to join together and basically cover what's been going on around the world and give everyone an update on what's really important. We spend our time studying everything that's going on, and being able to read between the lines is really a gift. There's
Hmm.
so much false news out there, and I feel that we have a calling, and we've been blessed to be able to see what's really going on and how it ties into the biblical prophecies. And that, for most of us, is the most important aspect of our study, is trying to understand, where are we in this timeline of events. And I'm excited to present everything tonight. We have quite a hefty show, and I shared everything that I was going to be discussing about with Joy today, and she told me that I need to remind everyone that even though we're going through some really heavy topics, that we should keep our peace and keep our faith and stay in joy, because we have a future, we have a Savior that is coming back, so we should rejoice in that. And yeah, that is our disclaimer for the show for tonight.
Yes, because when you are aware of the New World Order and you are awakened to certain aspects of prophecy, sometimes it can weigh heavily on you and it can be burdensome to carry knowledge of such information. And I know when I first woke up, it was difficult for me to just kind of do the normal routine that everybody else was doing. Um, and I know that I forgot how to laugh at that particular time of my life, and everything was so serious. But I've since, over the years, have learned that we have to maintain balance and also have hope, because our salvation is through Christ, and He is judge, and He will return to set all things straight and to divide the wheat and the tares. And so, just always remember, people, to try to take moments in each day to laugh and enjoy being with your loved ones, and to prioritize even the regular things of life, and to not overlook the blessings. Um, but yes, unplugging from the matrix, there's really a small remnant out there that has the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and a mind to understand. And but there are a lot of people that are trying to wake up and are trying to make sense of it all. And so this show and this platform, what we're going to be doing is to try to cater to that. I know that many, in previous years, I spent a lot of time covering the current events, but not so much because of my focus on books and trying to provide this other information. And so this will be good for us to do that and to keep updating, and moving on with the times as they are accelerating towards the end. So I'll turn it over to you, Justin, and you can open it up.
All right, well, I just want to say thank you again for having me, and we welcome everybody that is joining us on Freedom Slips. And for everyone that's joining us in the YouTube live chat, there's been so many people that are sending their blessings our way and saying how much they love us, and we really love you too, and we thank you for your support and for your blessings. It is a blessing to have this community, and we appreciate each and every one of you. To get started, I just want to kind of go through a lighthearted article, and this one is, I guess it's might make some people laugh. For me, it kind of like left my jaw dropped when I first read it, but the headline reads, United Nations claims it's politically incorrect to say husband or wife. And in this article, it gives a list of, right? In this article, it gives a list of politically correct alternatives to common terms. I just chose a few of them. So instead of saying boyfriend or girlfriend now, we're supposed to say partner. Instead of saying maiden name, we're supposed to say family name. And instead of saying husband or wife, we're supposed to say spouse. And it seems like a respectful move, right? But they want equality and all of that. But is anyone here familiar with the theosophical doctrine of dividing the family?
Am not.
I'm sure you are. The theosophy, I forgot what her name was.
Alice Bailey.
Alice Bailey, yeah. And,
yeah, the 10-point plan to destroy the family and
exactly.
Christian values, yes.
Exactly. I knew that you know exactly what I was talking about. Yeah, and I'm sure many of the listeners have heard of that as well. But this generation is just so full of people who can't see truth, even if it's written on their birth certificate.
Mm-hmm,
They want us to accept them for who they are when they can't even accept who they were. I'm not saying that they can't be accepted, people that go through sex changes and things like that, but it's that mindset which is causing the division. And it seems redundant to me to remind everyone of Sodom and Gomorrah, which we talk about pretty often in our Digital Readers Club, talking about, geography and things like that. But I encourage you, if you haven't, look at the recent video that was done by Timo Shelley of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he gives a high definition tour through the Ash Valley where the remnants of Sodom and Gomorrah exist. And there have been a lot of videos like this that have came out since travel and video cameras existed, where people were going out to that land and showing the pure sulfur that was in the ashes, the remains. But this guy goes and does a huge tour through that area, and it is really, it's incredible. That fire came out of heaven and just completely melted that entire city, burned everything up. You can see on the top of mountains where there was like a huge temple, and the temple, you can just see it melted, and it's like a volcano kind of like just came up in the middle, and all of the insides are like gooing out, and all of that became ash. It's just so intense.
Yeah, very, very powerful. I've been, working on this book on the pre-Adamites and the antediluvian age, and some of the ancient manuscripts that describe the destruction of Atlantis, which was destroyed from above and below, and also inundated with tsunamis all at the same time. So it was all these natural disasters come together in one cataclysmic judgment to destroy that particular land, which was an island. Well, an island and continent, and destroyed and smashed the whole first world age to smithereens. And so, yeah, the judgment against Sodom and Gomorrah is in similarity. It destroyed and even wiped out the memory. If it wasn't preserved scripturally, we wouldn't even know about it. But God does preserve the judgments and that he has made against the fallen ones for the evil. And I think it's, something that we should review in this day and age, because we find ourselves in similar circumstance. We are now a culture that has fallen away to such degree that, all these innocent babies are being murdered. And I think that even that in war is like a sacrifice to Satan, and like a blood ritual. And these kind of things are being done, and good and evil are so misconstrued, and the definitions of each are overlapping. So we find ourselves in similar territory with regard to the judgments that were brought upon previous cultures and civilizations.
Yeah, absolutely. In 2 Peter 3:7, it says, "But the heavens and the earth, which are now preserved by the same word, are reserved for fire until the day of
Yes.
judgment and perdition of ungodly
Hmm.
men."
Right.
And we know there's still a few things that have to happen before
Yes.
that final judgment comes. But what we're really excited to do in this series is to cover, exactly what is going on and how it ties into that timeline.
Hmm.
So, firstly, getting into real matters, real things that are going on, I just have to give another disclaimer to keep your joy, keep your mind focused on the eternity, the promise of eternal life, the promise of, the new kingdom that's coming. All of this, no matter
Yeah.
how tough it gets, you know, I just want to encourage you. But the encouragement will make sense once I just read these next few headlines. In the first 5 months of 2020, 620 Christians have been killed in Nigeria due to jihad. Around 30,000 have been martyred since 2009.
Wow.
And across the continent in Africa, a Muslim father just recently in Uganda burned his daughter after she converted to Christianity. And, these things are really confusing, like what is going on here? Like, these people are killing their family members for this. Like,
Right.
they're really fulfilling Bible prophecy. They're giving their own family up to
Right.
the beast, to this beast
Families
system.
divided. Yes.
It's just so sad, and it's really happening. A lot of us in the West are like, everything's continuing the same as it always has been,
Right.
but it's not. We're really comfortable here. We're blessed with some peace in this land for however long it lasts, but what's really going on in the world is that there's a huge tribulation occurring. I'll just read in the U.S. for those who think that we're totally apart from any type of Christian persecution. Just in Chicago, a mayor launched a police raid to shut down a black church's Sunday service. And this article comes from Breitbart, and I just want to read a little bit of it to give you a glimpse into what's really happening. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot dispatched police officers to shut down parking lots and tow the cars of Christians attending Sunday services. On May 23rd, churches in the city received letters from the Chicago Department of Health invoking emergency orders and deeming, listen to this, deeming churches a danger to society. The letters also invoked summary abatement, which gives the city the power to forcibly enter properties without a judge's orders and impose the mayor's will on occupants. Pastor Lewis told Starnes that he felt like he was confronting the Soviet-style KGB as the officers pounded on his doors and demanded entry to shut the church down. He says, "All we are seeking is the same consideration and trust that is being tendered towards the liquor stores, abortion clinics, and Walmart."
Right.
But, we're not the same as those. We are a threat to society, is what it says. And it reminds me of, how Rome, they wanted to kill all Christians the same as Jews. They wanted to kill all Christians because we're a threat to their authority and their power that they hold over all of the masses. And the same thing happened in Wuhan, China recently. And this is probably a common headline that many people have seen. But a pastor in Wuhan was performing a Zoom service. And Zoom is like a new conference call platform. I'm not sure.
Right. Like Skype. Yeah.
Well, you're familiar with it because you did a show with
Yes.
Red Pill 78 on Zoom. So
Right.
this pastor was having a Zoom meeting with his church, and in the middle of the meeting, the police raided his home and arrested him for performing that service.
Yeah.
And how crazy is it that all over the world, Christianity is being persecuted? You know,
Hmm.
we really have to make use of the freedoms that we still have and share the gospel while we still have a chance, because in so many places, you know, all those government crackdowns and the jihad that's wiping out villages in North Africa, those are becoming breeding grounds for terrors. And there's no more
Right.
wheat seed there for the Christians to develop fruit for the kingdom. You know, this is a real war that is uh, taking over the entire world now.
Right.
But thankfully, we do still have a little bit of peace here, even though we do see some crackdowns, like the one in Chicago. How do you feel about it, Zen?
Well, this kind of thing has been long in the making. And Rob and I were talking about even, a few shows ago about what they did in Waco, where they killed. And even though I don't agree with, some of the things that were going on there, especially with the pedophilia, but still, the rights of citizens to gather and to speak about the gospel and to even to bear arms and to stand in defense of their Second Amendment rights is not a crime. And, they could have, at any time, they knew David Koresh's routine. He went jogging every morning and went for a walk with his child. They could have grabbed him anytime that they wanted to. But they wanted to make a statement and they wanted to go after Christian groups and militant groups like that. Like the Minutemen, who were just citizens that had the right to bear arms and that had guns and came in defense of the nation at a time of emergency. And, I believe that these kind of groups where people are just getting together and not causing any trouble, but just because they have guns doesn't mean that, again, they're criminals. And but the government has labeled such groups domestic terrorists, and they have wanted to pursue a policy of crackdown against such groups for a very long time, even with Ruby Ridge and how they murdered the wife of Gary, I believe is Gary Webb or something of that nature, up there and killed his child. And so it's been a long time coming. And they, in the infrared, the FLIR video that you see of the crackdown in Waco, they sent in these tanks, two of them, and these tanks punched holes into the compound in different places in the compound and filled it with CS gas. And then there were armed FBI, well, not FBI, yeah, it was FBI agents, ATF actually, that were outside with automatic weaponry, and they were preventing people from actually leaving or getting out of the compound. And then they lit it ablaze. And that's why it went up so quickly, is because of that CS gas that was spread all throughout the compound. And they literally killed hundreds of people and many dozens of children as well. And, and so this kind of policy, this kind of crackdown is something that they have been wanting to do for a long time. In the Patriot Act, when all of that was passed without even being read, it labels Christians and patriots as domestic terrorists. And now they have the government has set up a military tribunal system that is alternate from what is our right to a jury trial by jury of our peers, and where you have habeas corpus rights, you have the right to remain silent, on to have a lawyer present, all of that kind of stuff. But in the military tribunal system, you don't have any rights, and they don't have to tell your family that you've even been abducted, through extraordinary rendition, that you are in some kind of black ops site, and that you're being tortured to gain information to use against you in this court of law, this alternative court of law. And so the secret government has come a long way in establishing a um, a justice, if you can call it that, a justice system where they can penalize you, prosecute you, and also, kill you, basically, judge you to death, sentence you to death, and they don't have to release anything. They could keep everything under wraps with the Declaration of National Security. And so, we are at a time, and we know that in the scriptures, and how Yana and Stephen have talked about the Noahide laws, and how all of these are already passed within the states, and they have on the books a policy whereby they can behead Christians, and it's been sitting there dormant, just like the FEMA camps are right now, and just like the concentration camps in World War II.
And all those guillotines that they purchased.
Yeah, the guillotines, the FEMA, the body bags, and all that. They're just waiting for a time when the elites will need them, and everything's already in place. And so, they plan decades, centuries in advance, even. And so that's why I think it's important for people to study things like the Illuminati Secret Covenant and Protocols book that we've released, to explain and to help people understand the plan that is on the books that was written by them, hundreds of years in advance, talking about the exact path of how they're going to set up and establish quote unquote global domination. And they're going to use the press to spread propaganda, controlled opposition, the false left-right paradigm. All these things are in place. And so it's important that people, because we're moving closer and closer to the time that all of that is being pushed into action, that people need to really become aware. Because otherwise you are going to be putting your life and that of your families at risk because of your ignorance. And that's why the scriptures say, my people are killed for lack of knowledge. So
yes, absolutely. And in other places around the U.S., the congregations are limited to 50 churchgoers, and some mayors are even saying that singing must be limited. In other words, you don't want to breathe because breathing can spread germs.
mm-hmm.
And others are saying to keep completely closed until a vaccine is available.
Right.
And, of course, that's part of this agenda. And like you said, they plan for centuries in advance. They have been working together behind the scenes, these elitist families who've held control over civilization for as long as civilization has been around, since Cain went and established the city of Enoch.
Enoch, yes.
He was the first one to really establish a city. And if you research civilization, civilization started with the use of slavery and usury and, the whole pharaoh type system in Sumeria, the Sumerian kings, things like that.
Weights and measures, commerce, trade, slavery, all that was put into place by them.
With the deception of science and everything that works together for that. But
yes,
I do want to move on to what's happening in the UK, and this might shock a lot of you, maybe not, but it says in the UK there is now a new norm which is being pushed to make permanent. So this this is something that happened due to the COVID outbreak. There's an influx of mosques in the UK after, the whole Syrian refugee and the Arab Spring and all the refugees flooding into the European Union and into UK now because they separated from the European Union. But they have almost become a majority, and the mosques are now doing their calls to prayers over loudspeakers. And I'm not sure, have you ever heard that, Dad? The call to prayer over the loudspeakers?
Yes.
If you travel to Israel, it's something that will wake you up every morning, and you'll hear it multiple times throughout the day. And the world has understandably become sympathetic towards the Arabic world, but what really bothers me is that the truth of Christianity is being cast down by these fraudulent theologies. Just do your research, But the people aren't interested in identifying with real truth. Instead, they want to identify with whatever's on their news network or favorite television program. And even children these days are becoming carbon copies of their favorite cartoon personalities. And, there are just so few individuals who are really seeking hard enough to read between the lines, to see the truth between the lies. Christians can't share the gospel in Israel without fear of expulsion from the country. And it's like the Muslims are able to broadcast on loudspeakers throughout the land every single day. That no doubt has led to plenty of proselytes and people that want to go into the mosques.
Right.
And
Go ahead, after you're done.
After you're done. One quick thought.
Yeah.
It really seems like Israel doesn't have a problem with that because I think that they're convinced that they worship the same God. And in my opinion, they do because their leaders are all caught up worshiping Satan. And they're full of the spirit of the Antichrist. And I can quote 3 verses from 1 John and 2 John. It says in 1 John 2:22, "Who's a liar but he that denies that Jesus is the Christ? He is the Antichrist that denies the Father and the Son." 1 John 4:3, "And every spirit that confesses not that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God, and this is that spirit of Antichrist, whereof ye have heard that it should come, and even now already is it in the world." And 2 John 1:7, "For many deceivers are entered into the world, who confess not that Jesus Christ has come into the flesh. This is a deceiver and an antichrist." So we know that the antichrist spirit is moving in the world. And yes, the Muslims and the Jews are part of this antichrist deception. People think that Muslims and Christians and Jews all worship the same God, but I just encourage you to look a little bit deeper because you'll see that facade is just a deception. It's just a false veil, and it's actually part of the deception to want to bring us all together.
Right. And here's the thing that is difficult for people to understand is that Satan always takes, counterfeits, plagiarizes, and different organizations, countries, and even the United Nations, he takes over rules from the top down. And with the Christian world, what we have, and even in Israel, we know that, it's the Talmudist Jews, those that are not Torah observant, and that those that deny Christ as Savior and Messiah, that have been part of the seed of Cain for very long, that rule there, in the same manner that we have in our own government here in the United States. Even though we are defined as a Christian nation, our leaders are not Christians, and they are part of New World Order as well. And so they have taken it upon themselves, and the same thing with England and the whole thing of colonialism, how they have spread terror throughout the world, enslaved people, and have created a population, and especially with the Muslims and other groups that have been oppressed and even genocided over many years, like even our war against them in Iraq was totally unjust. But that has now made it to where we, as the people, the United States and Americans who are real Christians and believers and wish nothing but goodwill and the equal, freedoms and values and opportunity and the right to pursuit of happiness and joy and religious freedom to all people everywhere. But the world hates us, and we stand because our government has done these kind of things, and the Muslims hate Christians, and it has created a racial and also a religious war. And these kind of things were set up in Albert Pike's vision of creating a world government and even of establishing um, Israel as a nation to create Jerusalem as a cup of trembling amongst the nations, that this would be a point of contention going into the final generation. And so for people that don't understand the controlled opposition and how all the nations of the world are controlled by the New World Order, and that what seems to be division amongst them is actually cooperation, and that they are all leading us to a collective fate and destiny that is fueled by hatred and racial war and also religious war. That Albert Pike said in his vision that they would set the Christians and the Muslims against each other, and then when they destroy each other, they would fill the vacuum with the atheists and the communists. And so we see that happening right now with Russia and China and other communist nations where they do not have religious freedom, and the Christians are being persecuted. Their organs harvested, targeted as political and religious dissidents, and that's what is happening with the current affairs and what the New World Order is bringing upon the world, the whole police state tyranny. And so, it's not just Muslims and Christians that are being Jews as well, Torah observant Jews, Messianic Jews, because we are not the rulers, and we are not the ones that are driving or leading the fate and destiny of humanity. And, God revealed to us that the beast system would come to power, the Antichrist would be appointed rule over it, and that he would war against the saints. And if it weren't for Christ as Savior Messiah, there should be no flesh left. Unless the days are shortened for the elect's sake, there should be no flesh left. And so that's the reason why we need Yahushua, Yah's salvation, to come and redeem us again from what is coming, to protect us from, the wrath that would be poured out against those that align, because the Antichrist will gain the favor and the power of all the other nations, and destroying America, going after Israel. That this is the agenda. This is the Ezekiel war, and we're seeing the fulfillment of all that. I just saw in a news story earlier today about how Russian jets intercepted an American, team of planes over the Mediterranean and antagonized them. Got, within feet, flew really close to them, antagonizing them. And this kind of thing is now being and occurring. The tensions are heightening between the communist countries. Those that don't know the vision of Dmitry Dudelman, he describes and how the angel Gabriel showed him a vision of how the America would be attacked by by the communist countries, and there have been many prophets throughout the last decades that have seen similar vision of attacks against America and by these communist nations. But again, all of these things are planned, and we see that this is coming into play, and that they are destroying America with debt. And this whole thing of the COVID-19 and the shutdown of the economies worldwide, whereas other economies like China and Russia, because they don't have any debt, they're not borrowing any money, they're going to be able to survive it. But it's destroying America to the point where we're never going to be able to pay off the debt of the money that we are borrowing just to pay interest on what we are borrowing. And so at any point, because they are purchasing our debt and buying our government bonds, they could just refuse to do so, and that's going to collapse the government, and it's going to force a shutdown. And what do we do? There will be no cash flow to support the militaries, to support the governments, to support Social Security or anything like that. I mean, it would be a huge mess, and it would be a way for them to win the war against us without even firing a shot. And so these are very tentative times, and again, these things are written not only in the protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion and other like the Secret Covenant, but this is Bible prophecy. It all fits together. And so, this again is why I believe it's critical for people to gain knowledge, to look into what's really going on, and to study not only the conspiratorial side of what is occurring and to understand the controlled opposition, but also how it ties in to the prophecies that were laid out by Daniel and others so many thousands of years ago. Because, again, we are that fig tree generation, that the remote and distant generation where all things are coming to pass.
Definitely. You covered quite a bit of topics there, but just to
Yeah.
respond to the one about, our debt, and I think the whole world is indebted to their central banks. And
Yeah.
the central banks, they're really controlled by the same elitist family members.
Right.
And all of that debt, the perpetuation of that debt is part of that plan.
Right.
And, a universal basic income, and that future is something that, could very really happen with the Nasara event. And if you haven't studied Nasara, I encourage you to check that out. But oh yeah, Maliv actually just mentioned, what do you think about Nasara Gassara and the loan forgiveness that's been going on? That Nasara event, when all the debts, they're going to call it a jubilee, and everyone's debt is going to be forgiven. To me, that's definitely going to be part of the Antichrist revealing.
Absolutely. Right.
I mean, it very easily will be part of the Antichrist revealing, but there was one thing that I wasn't going to talk about till later. But speaking of, the Nasara and everything like this, I wanted to bring up one article. It was from Forbes, and it's titled "Visa Applies for a Digital Dollar Blockchain Patent." And this article describes how Visa wants to centralize all fiat currencies into one crypto-based currency. And I'm just going to read it again, so maybe it will spark something in your brain if it's not already like lighting up like a light bulb. This article describes how Visa, the company, like the credit card, Visa wants to centralize all fiat currencies into one crypto-based currency. And this isn't a decentralized currency like, Bitcoin and other uh, cryptocurrencies. This is centralized. Think central bank, think Federal
Right.
Reserve. And they have plans to use this worldwide to actually implement the universal basic income to all citizens of the NWO. In the patent, they show a picture of the patent in the article, and it actually shows a Freemason square and compass. And
Oh my goodness.
it's in a mainframe titled Architect, which is one of the main
Wow.
components in the transaction system that they have a schematic of with their
Mm.
patent.
Wow, that's absolutely mind blowing because you know Joy and I have been watching this whole thing with the Westworld and how it has this computer AI system that runs these scenarios and has used the knowledge and the data of and has been collecting it on all the citizens of the world so that understanding the behaviors of all people, it runs these scenarios that predict the future. And they use this, it's called Solomon, and they use it to predict and to print out what they need to do in order to control and to dominate and to rule over all people everywhere. And so, it's similar to that because we know that they want to go to a cashless society. They want to be able to control wealth on a computer system. And by installing AI technology that has people like we use credit cards right now, they want us to have chips and computer systems tied into our brains and implanted into our hands and foreheads, and that these things will be able to control commerce, buying and selling. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie or if the listening audience has seen the movie called The Net with Sandra Bullock in it. But she, waking up and catching on to, she became aware of the secret government in some way, and they basically erased her digital imprint to where she had no funds and no social security, no identity, and no way to live within the society. And then they hunted her down and were trying to kill her. And so this kind of thing is Orwellian, Brave New World, 1984. It's the same kind of stuff and the way that
Mm-hmm.
government, the elites have wanted to be able to control. And, if you have money in a bank or whatever, or if you have cash or coins or, you don't have your money in a bank, then they can't control your wealth. But if all wealth is a digital currency or something that is on a computer and is controlled and accessible to them, well, then they could just, totally uh, steal all your money, steal all your wealth, bankrupt you in a matter of seconds. And
It
that's
says
true
no
power.
man can buy or sell
Yeah,
without the
true
mark of the
control.
beast.
Right.
Pixie
And
from
so, yeah.
Pixie said in the chat, there will be a price for debt forgiveness.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
maybe
Right.
you have to take the mark. You got to take
Exactly.
this
Right.
implanted chip right here, or else you're not going to be part of
Yes.
our system. And
Right.
the whole world's on the system, so you got to get on here. You
Right.
got to take the
Right.
mark. Everybody's doing it.
Yep. It's for your own good. If you want to feed your children, that's
Right.
um, and then also if you want to be part of the system, you got to get all your vaccines. If you want your driver's license or your passport, if you want to be able
Mm-hmm.
to travel, you got to make sure you have all your inoculations. And so, this this
Right.
is the brave new world. So,
Yeah, you got to get all your vaccines because, of course, they keep up with all those things, and your
right.
medical records are going to be right there on your chip. We got all your data, so you don't have to
Hmm.
worry about getting a bunch of different licenses anymore.
Right.
It's Definitely, it's crazy to see how
How far?
accurate Bible prophecy is.
Yes, absolutely.
But I want to kind of return back to talking about the synagogue of Satan. Those who say they're Jews but they're not, and our connection. As Americans.
Yes.
And if you really want to know the stone cold truth, you'll find out that our president is not the savior that everyone thought him out to be.
Or thinks him to be.
Yeah, or still thinks that he is. Yes, all the churches that are aligned with the synagogue of Satan and the ones that they call God's chosen people, they all repeat in their sermons how Trump is great and how he's being used to bring about the reconstruction of the temple and how it's aligned with the coming of the Messiah. But well, they even went as far as minting a coin with his likeness on it,
Right. The
comparing
new
him to King
Cyrus.
Cyrus, right? But my question is, which Messiah are they really preparing for?
Right.
We definitely know, but just
The
talking
true
about
Messiah.
Israel. Well, they're not preparing for the true Messiah.
No,
We
we
are,
are.
of course.
Yes.
But the rebuilding of the temple and the Messiah that the synagogue of Satan is going to reveal is definitely not the real Messiah. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I just want to bring about one more article real quick before we go into break here in a few minutes. This past Monday, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, spoke about annexing the West Bank from the Palestinians. Many of the parts that were already basically invaded. It was like a reverse civilization jihad where the Jews went in, established businesses, they established their own communities and homes and apartment complexes and threw up huge walls around their little cities. Well, now Israel is going to officially make those part of Israel, and they're going to annex that land. And they cite Trump as an ally, with this deal of the century peace plan.
Uh-huh.
And today he even Netanyahu came out with the timeline of July for this annexation. And we got to watch this closely because this means that Israeli territory is creeping further past the line on the Temple Mount. And this all comes with a secret pact between the King of Jordan and Prime Minister Netanyahu that regards the Temple Mount. And they won't divulge any information about the terms or conditions of that pact, but the Jordanian King Abdullah did say that Israeli annexation of parts of the West Bank will lead to a massive conflict with Jordan. And it suggested that it could potentially unleash protests and violence on the level of a third intifada. Palestinian Authority leaders, as well as Hamas, have vowed that such an extensive new Israeli land grab will be resisted by all costs. And of course, the hype around that area is always so big, but they are now really going and annexing that land. This is something that they actually have a timeline for now. And for those that don't know, the Jordanians are the official custodians of the Temple Mount, where the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Western Wall reside. They're basically like a peacekeeping force for the area, which has really become like a cup of trembling for all the nations.
Right.
Most of the United Nations and European Union support Palestine as a persecuted people, and
Right.
while the U.S. and the far-right governments, they support the Zionist state of Israel.
Right.
And it's a pressure point for international calamity.
Yes.
And it's certainly a place that we have to keep current on, as we all know that eventually the false Messiah will reign there, and the two witnesses,
Right.
they will be there, and their dead bodies will be left in the streets of that place called Jerusalem, also
Yes.
called in Revelation Sodom and
Sodom,
Egypt.
yes. Right.
And something that I think that we should also look out for is someone that might be able to relieve that pressure point and create a peace treaty.
Right. Absolutely. Those are the things that I am watching for. And with regard to, the Messiah or the Mahdi that, the Persians are awaiting. This is the Antichrist, without a doubt. And scripturally, it says in the Apocalypse of Peter how the Jews will follow a false Messiah. Um, and that, it's tied together with, again, the regathering of Israel, which for a lot of people that know, I believe that Israel is the regathering of the fig tree. But I also know that it is not ruled by the true Israel, that it's ruled by the Zionists and by the synagogue of Satan, those who say they are Jews but are not. But that is the state of the world. Everything is ruled by the Masonic pyramid, the eye of Ra, which is representative of Satan and Legion. They are the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness and wickedness in high places that the scriptures talk about. But still, the event happening is part of the prophecy of what we see, as we talked about with Zechariah 12 and Jerusalem becoming a cup of trembling. That it is the trigger that in Albert Pike's vision as well, that the reason they wanted to establish the League of Nations and the United Nations was to create Israel. And they wanted to gain access to that land because of the wealth and also the archaeology and all of the priceless artifacts that are and have been in the ground in and around that area. And they've controlled, even with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, how there were 2 copies of full extent Aramaic copies of the Book of Enoch discovered there, but yet all they give us is the fragments, all the broken up little pieces of different books and scriptures, and even that hasn't been fully released yet. And so they wanted to control, and that's the way they've done, even with now, the targeting of Iraq and Afghanistan, those ancient places as well. They gain the artifacts, they gain control of the oil, they gain control of the opium and the poppy. And you see that since our war with Afghanistan, which lasted and still is in effect, lasted longer than World War II, look at the flood of heroin all throughout the world and how it's now easily found in every small rural town in America. And you have all of these kids that are junkies. They're hardcore addicted to heroin. And it's so cheap and it's so powerful, so strong. And now they're cutting it with fentanyl, and it's causing a lot of overdoses, a lot of death. And so this was all part of the plan as well. And so we see, well, we're going to have to go to break, but that, even what you and Joy had experienced in Israel, that people are, Tel Aviv, there's junkies right there on the street that are interjecting heroin, and nothing is said and nobody's locked up, and it's absolutely insane, which we'll talk about that when we return. We'll be right back for second hour, everyone.
Constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Hello everybody. As you know, in our Digital Readers Club, We just finished the Great Commission 3 on the end time apocalypses and are now moving forward because of your vote into the Yahushua Christ, the infancy, gospels, early childhood, and lost year narratives. And so in this particular book, and the reason I compiled it is because there's only one account in the entire Bible that relays anything with regard to the youth of Christ, and it is the story of when he's 13 years old and he leaves Mary and Joseph, and they, retracing their steps, find him teaching the rabbis and the elders in the Holy Temple, the Jerusalem Temple, about the mysteries of the heavens. And so I wanted those of us that are believers and that hold and have faith in Christ to have the fullness of the stories and the accounts of his early life that are available to those that wish to know more. And so that was the reason for the compilation of all of these accounts, is to give you better insight into who our Savior Messiah is and how he was, even in his youth, without question, he was the fullness, the incarnation of God, and that he had the authority even then of life and death, and that Mary used even his bathwater and his swaddling clothes to heal leprosy and to bring people out of their demonic possessions. And so I believe that the study of this material will greatly bless your life and help you to better understand the core tenets of why we believe on him and know without question that salvation is through him.
Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
Which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Welcome back, everybody, for a second hour. We, again, appreciate your taking the time to join us in live broadcast. We do hope that you are enjoying the show. I'm joined by my son this evening, and we are doing a new once a month platform on current events and its connections to prophecy. And so let me turn it back over to you, son, and let you finish up your thoughts here.
Well, we were just talking about Israel and the wars of the synagogue of Satan and the elitists and how everything is really connected, all the wars that have been going on. And it's really scary to think how much power uh, the authoritative organizations have gained, and how much power the citizens of the free nations want to give back to them. There's this concept called creeping socialism. And socialism is basically just communism with a different name. But this is a real term that you'll find if you study politics or government at any university. It's actually where I learned my freshman year in American government class. I learned about this concept called creeping socialism, and it's the tendency for all free nations, all republics and democracies to creep back towards socialism and to want to give all of the rights of the citizens back to the government, because people want there to be a big organization that can take care of everything, because people want to feel secure. People want to feel like they're being taken care of. But there was a comment in our YouTube live chat from Bill. He said, I don't understand how we're even able to get young men and women to join the armed services anymore. The fraud of fighting for freedom is so obvious. Blood sacrifice to maintain power and control. And it's crazy for people that really think and people that really research. You can see through, like you're talking about, there are these sanctuary cities all across the world where drugs that are brought in by the governments are dished out, and we're all being fed on some type of pharmakeia, some type of drug, whether it's in the public water supply or the vaccines or whatever they're giving us. We're all being brought into this indoctrination and this system of total control, and it's that concept, creeping socialism. We read through the last show that we did together, and we were reading from the Illuminati Secret Covenant, the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, and it was talking about how their end goal is a totalitarian government for the whole world, and that by the time their plan succeeds, the citizens of the world will be calling for one king to rule over them all, to represent them all, and biblically speaking, we know exactly who that king's going to be. And scarily enough, just recently, I think it might have been a day or two ago, somebody sent us this video, and it was of Bill Gates in an interview with Vox. And he was speaking on what his hopes are moving forward after the COVID-19 outbreak. And he states very explicitly that it's his hope that the world will become closer. Like after World War II, the United Nations was founded along with the World Health Organization. And of course, that's only been a good thing. And he says organizations like those are the reason that we didn't move into another world war. I mean, that's a joke in itself, right? Because we're definitely in a type of world war. Right. But he hopes that more organizations are established from this crisis. I mean, obviously, that's been their goal all along, inching nearer to total domination, total control, a totalitarian kingdom of the earth for the Antichrist to come rule over.
Yes, absolutely. And they're not even, trying to hide it in any manner, which is why anybody that does any true investigation of the New World Order and the plan of the elites to lead us through this whole Brave New World in 1984 Orwellian police state tyranny, controlled opposition. I mean, this is all their language. The utilizing a new Pearl Harbor as the pretext for this global war on and of terrorism that will not end in our lifetimes. I mean, these are all things that they are saying, that they have been talking about, and that they have put out into the public. And yet people are oblivious and think that, we're nuts and talk about us as, being tinfoil hat wearing individuals. But, how ignorant do you have to be, and how far is it going to have to go before you take recognition? I mean, is it going to be the murder of your family or your nation or, your people, your church? I mean, what's it going to take for you to finally wake up and pay attention and see? Because this is prophecy. This is what the elites have put out themselves of the agenda of what they are trying to lead us into. And so, it's the same thing for me as the search of biblical cosmology. It's very easy to determine that there's no curvature and that the earth is not moving at 1,037 miles an hour. Simple facts. Same thing with the New World Order. You look into it, you realize that there is a bloodline, just as it says in the scripture, the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, that this war has been ongoing, just as they have all throughout history been the murderers of the prophets, from Abel to Zacharias, the high priest in the time of when Christ was embodied in the flesh, that this is all still going on. Assassinations are happening every day somewhere where they are waging war against the sons of Adam, and yet people are oblivious and have no concern, care not, and until it touches them, it just does not matter, which is unfortunate.
What an awesome.
Yes.
Buddy here. Speaking,
Yes.
I want to just share with you how simple it is. All right, are you ready for this? This is one of those one-liners that most people, disagree with, but I'm going to quote straight from the Messiah's mouth in John 5:24. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that hears my word and believes on him that has sent me has everlasting life, and shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death unto life.
Amen.
Amen. I just want you to know that is how simple it is. And if you're curious about another confirming witness to that, Romans 10:9 says that if you will confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and will believe in your heart that God has rose him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart man believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation.
Amen.
Thank you, brother, for joining us, and thank you everybody in the chat that was encouraging him and giving suggestions. It is such a blessing for us to know our Savior and to have that promise of redemption, because without that, we're really lost in this world. We're going to burn up with it. Just
right.
Plain and simple. Nothing in this world is going right. It's going right according to the enemy's plans, but everything is being led astray. Truth is being called lies, and lies are being called truth. Good has become evil, and evil has become good. It was prophesied that would happen, and we have a blueprint of these end times. So, once you confess faith, the Holy Spirit will come to you and give you discernment as you read and as you study the scriptures. So, thank you everybody for joining us. And Dad, would you like to say anything about that?
Yes, that that just makes me overjoyed, because that's the whole mission. That's the whole goal of Sacred Word Publishing, Endeavor Freedom. What we do as a family is to bring people to salvation through Christ. And for people to be asking that in the chat room, that's the most important thing. And for this individual to realize that he needs to be saved through Christ and through the blood of the Lamb and through the promise of the cross, that's the realization that I hope every person listening will come to conclusion upon. because that is the questions we should be asking ourselves. It's the larger reasons for why we are here in the flesh and at this time. And it's also the whole theme of the basis of the Christian faith is that, our ancestors were deceived, fell, and came from a bright nature into mortal flesh form, into a fallen world, into a fallen state of being where the prince of the power of the air, Satan, the adversary of man, and Legion, they rule in this world for temporary time, for a short time. Woe unto you, the earth and sea, for the devil comes down to you with wrath, knowing his time is short. And so, to understand that Christ came into the flesh in order to defeat death, to show us that the way home is through him, as the way, the truth, and the light. And so, yes, that is the most important thing. And I'm so very happy for this brother. And I pray this for all of you out there as well, especially those that, are concerned about your children, that, that there are so many in this generation that are lost, wayward, and that are, have kind of just lost their way and have no guidance, no direction, and don't know who to turn to for any real answer or any, example. And so, I'm so just happy for this individual. And I pray for all of you out there that you do some serious contemplation and ponder exactly what this individual is questioning and thinking upon. Because again, our eternity, our everlasting life through Christ is what is important. Everything else is secondary and really nonsensical. If you're not coming to knowledge of salvation through the Son of God as the Passover lamb, the lamb that brought forgiveness unto the entire world, you're, in my opinion, not focused correctly on what, even our whole reason for coming into flesh was and is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for the encouragement again. Thank you, Dad, for sharing that. I want to just move on. We have a few more points, and time is quickly drawing to an end for this show. I can't believe how fast time
Right.
goes by, but we still have a few big articles to discuss, a few big occurrences that are going on, and one of them is this new government program called contact tracing. And I'm sure many people have probably heard about this too, but it's definitely an overreach. It's contact tracing. And it seems in theory like it would be an effective tool to help actually combat a real outbreak. But there are a lot of scary things about this contact tracing software. Basically, what it does is, well, first of all, it comes with every new cell phone, and everyone who updates their cell phones with Apple or Google software, this software is being installed on your phones. And what it does is sends a Bluetooth ping, and it's good for about 15 feet around your cell phone. And every cell phone has a certain signature, and when it crosses another cell phone, that cell phone will save your signature so that they know that you've come in contact with that person. And so, if somebody goes to the hospital and they get diagnosed with COVID-19,
Wow.
they can, they will know exactly who has been in contact with that individual.
Wow, that
But
is crazy.
there are some very scary things about this, all right? So once an individual is deemed contaminated, they're forced into a quarantine. And the people that are in their local area are forced to be vaccinated. And the people that they've come in contact with are forced into quarantine. And these measures, they're ramping up. The power that the government is receiving is more and more because people are shouting like, keep us safe, prevent this outbreak. And personally, I still don't know a single individual who's come down with COVID-19, but that's a different story. But with regard to this contact tracing software, who really knows whether or not we were really contaminated or the person that they say was contaminated? We're totally putting our trust into the software developers with these things and the rulers of wickedness in high places. Now, I personally don't trust them, but the problem is that the normal sheeple are willing to go along with the recommendations and accept whatever they're told to do so that it becomes a norm. And then you become a radical because you don't accept the norm. It's the same reason we're called conspiracy theorists. Because we don't accept the mainstream narrative, even though our point of view is actually more based on fact. They still call us crazy, or like you said, tinfoil hatters. Their faith is in authority. And it's an authority that we know has gained power by utilizing slavery, war, famine, deception, and pharmakeia.
False flag.
That's not where my faith is. As we so often say on this program, our faith is in the Creator, our Savior, and it's only Him who will truly bring peace to this fallen world.
Amen. That's
Not to say that there won't be someone who comes claiming to be bringing peace, because there definitely will be. But we know, according to 2 Thessalonians 2, that the false Messiah will come before the true Messiah.
Absolutely. And that's another reason why people have to study Scripture, is because the strong delusion and the deception comes first. And if you're not ready for that, and if you're not looking for that, and if you're not awake with the children of light, then you'll get caught up in that deception. And it says that even the most elect could be deceived, should it be possible. And so, very important point. And the other thing with, this was the same thing that happened during the time of Nazi Germany, where they just came in and took families out at night, and nobody even second guessed it. Nobody even questioned it, because it's the authority of the government, and, you don't question, you don't protest, you don't say anything. And so they could declare, oh yeah, this person, has COVID, and their whole family has COVID, and all these other people that they came in contact with have it too. And so they just go round them up at night, and then it becomes something that everybody's used to seeing. There's no second guessing, no questioning. Everybody just trusts government knows what they're doing, and they're protecting us from ourselves. And so,
I wanted to point out, Carly mentioned that there is a setting on your phone where you can turn this off, and it's under privacy. But she says, I'm not convinced it actually turns it off. I'm not convinced either. And, of course, this isn't like the first time that I don't believe this is the first time they've tracked, who we've come in contact with. And our location, obviously, is always tracked through Google Maps and all the various apps and all of that, definitely. But they're coming openly with this, and it's being received by the masses, and the masses are encouraging the government to take more of their freedoms. That's all part of that reaping socialism agenda.
Yes. People still aren't even aware of what Edward Snowden talked about with the spying and the NSA, and now going back 2 decades to 2001 and around there, where he came out and he let people know that, the governments have, through the digital technology, the ability to stare back at you through your smart TVs, through your smartphones, through your computers. They can turn on your cameras. They can listen in. Even when you turn your phone off, they can turn the microphones on. at these kind of capacities. They are recording everything, every text, every email, probably even every conversation. We just don't know anymore. And this is, again, another thing with the whole theme of Westworld and the AI technology. And they talk about the New World Order and the computer systems that have been set up to run the simulations and to help the elites to control everything. It's like Skynet, the whole Terminator, that whole series, and how the machines came to rule over humanity and took control of the world. And so these kind of concepts, these kind of themes that are being spoken about and released in Hollywood, there's a reason why they are showing you. They're letting you know, and they are also showing to those that are their followers and those that are working with them as to where they want to lead us and of what they want to achieve. And you can believe it is being driven by the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness, wickedness in high places. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but these fallen ones that have been here for a very long time and that are trying everything they can to establish themselves as like the Most High for the time that they have left, because they know that they have but short time. They even asked Christ, have you come to torment us before the time? So they know there is a time when the gig is up for them.
Absolutely. We know who has the true victory.
Yes.
But we know who the God of this world is as well. The one that blinds the people of this world that don't have faith. And they have quite an army. I wanted to share a couple comments from the YouTube live chat. One thing was brought to our attention by JP. He said, unfortunately, Alan Dershowitz, the Harvard attorney on Trump's legal team, has recently gone on record that constitutionally we do not have a right to refuse a mandated vaccine. And, if that's the case, I'm going to be going to jail, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not really sure, but that's crazy. And then Brent J. Said that Trump is for military deployed vaccines. And, can you imagine the military knocking on your door and saying, you need to take this vaccine or we're going to be taking you to a jail?
Right.
It's crazy. I remember last show that we did, the quarantine agenda. And
right.
The WHO had just went on record. The World Health Organization had just went on record talking about how they wanted to go into people's homes and they wanted to test them and they needed to figure out exactly who was sick so that they could take them out of their homes and quarantine them. They want to go door to door and enter our homes. I mean, that's like the last line of our freedom. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They've entered enough with their technology and bugging everything, but it's crazy.
Yeah, there is no private property. There is no personal freedom. There is no boundary where government cannot cross the line. And they want to be able to, force you to do whatever they want. If they want to inject you with poisons, then you better let them, and don't put up a fuss. Don't even talk about all of the ingredients, the cancer viruses and the glycol and the formaldehyde and the mercury and the thimerosal and the aborted fetal tissue and, just insanity. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it really is. And somebody in the chat was mentioning how my mic was a little bit lower than yours. I apologize for that. I just checked my settings on the back end and I tried to turn it up a little bit. So hopefully that is better. Please let us know if you have continued problems. But yeah, we have about 30 minutes left. And, speaking on the whole vaccine issue, there are so many theories that are, going around about what the different vaccines are. The luciferase or whatever,
Right.
whatever's in the
Oh, gosh.
vaccine that's supposed to be making people glow. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I have.
So
Uh,
they can like tell that you've received the vaccine by if you're glowing or not. Like there are so many crazy things that are going on, but you know what I just want to encourage everyone to remember is that the mark of the beast is something that is required to buy or sell. And so this is, the what we're given as information and prophecy about the mark of the beast. So, the vaccines aren't there yet. You can still buy or sell without vaccines. So there are a lot of people that are, hyping the COVID-19 vaccine as the mark of the beast and, things that are in the vaccine as the mark of the beast. But I just want to encourage you all to remember that, that simple part of the prophecy that it's going to be required to buy or sell. And for some reason, my microphone turned its volume down again, but hopefully I'm just going to keep this the properties box up and keep turning it up.
right.
You never know with technology. There's so many bugs everywhere and so many buggers.
I think there's an advanced setting um, that it does the automatic sensitivity or something of that nature. Somebody had sent me something about it. I had that same problem where my mic the sound kept going down. But if anybody knows what I'm talking about, you can send us a link to a video that tells us how to fix that.
I just figured it out. I just found it and turned
Okay,
it off.
good. Okay, good. Excellent. All right, well, good. At least that's resolved. And so, yeah, again, with regard to the Brave New World Order, we do encourage people to look at and read and study for yourself the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, because we are living in and we can, what is happening that has been written down for a very long time. And it's important for you and your family to know what's coming and what's up so that you can do what you can to protect yourselves. And, knowledge is vital in this time, in this age, because threats are everywhere. The New World Order is attacking us at every turn of the way, on all so many different levels. The report from Iron Mountain discusses how they would need a plan to implement means of reducing the population and of culling the masses before there could ever be any kind of semblance of world peace. And this was written back in the 60s. And they talked about at that time how they would need to put poison in the food, the water, the air. And, we see the atmospheric aerosol injection, all of that came up right after the vaccines and all of that. And then now you find MSG and high fructose corn syrup in all of the foods. I mean, why is it necessary to put that stuff in everything? And then for the people that have woke up and that no longer support those kind of products, you have these same multinational corporations creating alternatives where they leave that stuff out. Why include it in the first place? Why don't people ask themselves those kind of things? And so there is a consciousness shift. There is an awakening amongst the elect of God, I do believe. But we need to do all we can, each one of us out there, to be the change, and to support the kingdom, to be the watchmen. The scriptures tell us that we need to sound the trumpet to warn the people so that their blood is not upon our hands, that we did what we could to stand for truth, to stand for God, and to sound the alarm of what's coming. And I take that to be a very important, as far as our role and our mission for all of us. That is part of doing the Great Commission, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. It's very important, that the parable of the watchman, if you are called to be a watchman and you know what's going on and you don't let others know, you don't sound the trumpet, we have a responsibility there. We're all actually soldiers. We're all actually watchmen. We have a calling together to let those around us, to let our loved ones know what's going on. Even if it's just sitting down with your family members and reading through Matthew 24 and, letting them make of it what they will. Just, let them know there's something to all this that's going on.
Yes.
The Bible really is, it's like tomorrow's newspaper given to us today. And it clearly gives so much understanding to us of who the real enemy of the world is. And that's something that actually helped me come out of atheism was, studying the organized evil. Mm-hmm. And seeing the evil that's in the world, and then realizing that the Bible really does explain where that evil comes from and how they've kept power throughout the ages, and tracing back the civilization back to Cain, from Sumeria to Babylon and Egypt and Greece and Rome, and from Rome, through Europe to the UK, and now, the UK having arms in both Israel and America,
Right.
This beast system, this one world government system is identified. And it's not too confusing. There are some questions for me about, the end times beast and the false Messiah. Is it going to come from Islam or is it going to come from Judaism? And this is a question that I had a lot, actually. I was struggling with it a few years ago. I was all about, Islam is the enemy of Israel and the church, but the more you study, you realize Israel is the church. It lays it out very plainly that those who didn't believe in the Messiah, they were cut off of that of that olive tree. Those who reject the Messiah, that is the spirit of the Antichrist now. The true Israel is the believers in the church. So the whole synagogue of Satan, that is a greater deception to me than the Islam is. But the Islamic arm is more apparently at war with Christianity. So which one really is it that this false Messiah is going to come through? In my opinion, both Islam and the synagogue of Satan in Talmudic Judaism, they are actually hand in hand. I feel like the Arab world is totally a puppet of the Zionist state. The elitist state. The Zionist state of Israel is just the icing on the cake for their kingdom that they have worldwide through Freemasonry and all of their secret organizations that have an arm. Actually, they have a majority in every government worldwide, except for a few which they call outcasts, I believe, probably like North Korea. But even them, they're totally isolated from the civilized world because of their lack of a central bank and things like that. But anyways, I'll just turn it back over to you before we get into our last couple topics that I wanted to discuss tonight.
Sure. And again, with regard to the New World Order, they sit on and they use all of the countries of the world that are part of the organized, like the United Nations, because that is the seat of the synagogue of Satan. They use the United Nations as world government to control the affairs of all the nations of the world, and to reduce even the larger nations like United States and Russia and others, even though we have a seat on the Security Council, when it comes to a vote, even the small countries, which they created a lot of small countries to centralize power for themselves as well, that's the way they control. They control the vote of the United Nations to force the world to bow down to their tyranny and to their agenda. And so even with regard to the Antichrist, it's going to be a one world government, one world religion, one world economic, political system, and he's going to be the head of all. And so it will be idolatrous Christianity, it will be the Roman Catholic Church, it will be Islam, it will be Hinduism, it's going to be every pagan religion and every faith. It's going to be everybody, the Buddhists, the Native Americans, indigenous tribes, the modern day Mayans, Celtics, all the people that embrace the old earth religions and all the old pagan religions that worship, the Anunnaki still, or that worship the pantheon of gods and goddesses, whether by Roman or Greek or whatever name, and title and identity they go by, or the ancient Egyptian gods. There are all of these diversified, widespread cultures, civilizations, religions, but they're all going to come together under one umbrella. And we, the believers in Christ that are not the followers of organized religions, but the followers of the Messiah, and that, I know the Messiah as part of the Holy Trinity. Others don't. But even still, believing in the Messiah, he is the way, the truth, and the light again. And so people that understand the truth of that, and that salvation is through him, and that he was God incarnate into flesh, these are the true believers, those that believe in the promise of the cross, that know that salvation is through him. We are going to be the outliers, the divergence. And so we see the theme of all that in these apocalyptic narratives, even like with the Hunger Games. We're the ones that are going to be fighting against the system and against what is the cattle and all of those that are being led to slaughter, that are following in line and that walk the same way, those that are all still tied into and connected to the matrix. We're the ones that are unplugged, that have, again, the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and the mind to understand. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us the enemy of the New World Order, of the government, of the system, of the secret government, of the elites. And so, that's the truth of it, in my opinion. And Antichrist will come to lead all those that are part of this one world system, and that will bow down and take his mark and, worship him as God. And so, in my opinion, I think all that is still tied to, as well, the strong delusion is that the Antichrist is going to be an extraterrestrial, alien God, and that people that, buy into the New Age, that support the Anunnaki and the pagan religions, and that believe that humanity was seeded by the extraterrestrials long ago, that, in my opinion, is the deception that is coming.
Yeah, that's a really good point. How this false god is definitely going to tie in with the Sumerian records and the Egyptian paganism that was passed down through Greece and Rome, and and spread in India. All of those things are definitely seem to be like they're going to be united. Talmudic Judaism, they have a lot in common with the Kabbalah and Hinduism.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's very interesting how they all play a part together. But that kind of ties into one of the last articles that I wanted to share. The headline says, "Search for Christian unity is making progress," Pope says. And the Catholic Church is basically searching to, or they're trying to bring all Christians from all denominations together. And in my opinion, it makes
Right.
sense that we recognize that we're one body in Christ.
Mm,
But when we start uniting under an authority
exactly.
other
Yes.
than Christ, it
That's right.
becomes really dangerous. Especially since the Catholic Church is
Exactly.
also seeking to unite with all the other religions of
Right.
the world.
Exactly.
It's this false system has been in place for so long, and the deception's been in the works for so long. But originally in Rome, they persecuted all the Christians.
Yes, all the true
They
believers,
they
right?
slaughtered. Joy and I also, on our way to Israel for Passover in 2018, we went through Europe and stopped at the Vatican area and in Rome, and we saw the Colosseum, and we went to these places that they were called circuses, and it's like where they would have, it was kind of like smaller versions of the Colosseum, and they would have races, the horse and carriage races, and then during the intermissions between the races, they would bring out Christians and they would slaughter Christians en masse.
Right.
And the evil things were done there to believers, and they were used as torches to light the arenas. They were dipped in oil and burned, and they were, I'm sorry if I'm being too graphic, it's just things that really happened.
Right.
They were fed to lions. They were forced to do battle with other soldiers that would obviously kill
Gladiators.
them, and
Yes.
it was a horrible system. But that same system, as they persecuted Christianity grew. Christianity thrived because
Right.
the faith of these martyrs, they left a seed, and all those who were in the Colosseum, watching and cheering and rooting and hooting and hawing, the seed took root in them, and instead of enjoying the games, they started to feel what the Christians were going through, and they started to see the faith of the Christians, and that faith spread. And no matter how many Christians, they kept feeding them to the lions, they kept killing them, but Christianity grew because Christianity is true, and those people had true faith because they were descendants of the people who saw firsthand exactly what happened to the Messiah.
Right.
They knew the truth of what really happened and his resurrection power, and they kept the faith until the death. And eventually Rome realized, no matter how many of these Christians we kill, we can't stop the growth. And what did they do? They turned their agenda, and instead of persecuting the church, they took authoritative power over the church.
Yes,
So
exactly.
we know that organizations, their leadership has always been infiltrated. Somebody asked earlier about what do we think about the Jesuits, and we published this book called The Secret Instructions of the Jesuits,
Yes.
and it's from
Right.
like the 15 or 1600s, and if you read it, it's eerily, it's really creepy how it seems like a innocent doctrine, but you realize the evil that's laced within that.
Yes.
They go out and they make people think they're philanthropists and that they're doing well for the kingdoms, and they gain favor with the kings, but they're actually perpetuating the same organization that originally just wanted to eliminate all Christians.
Right.
But now they're just taking control of the organization, and like we see here, they want to unify all Christians underneath, forget the Protestant Reformation, just come back under the Catholic Church. It's okay. Or, don't even come under the Catholic Church. Let's just all join together. We need to all, join in global harmony. And, one day God is going to return. We all believe that. And, sure enough, that the false God is going to return. And that organization is going to be worshiping that false God. And so would you like to speak on that right before we move into our last article to discuss for tonight?
Yes. With regard to the Roman Colosseum, we published the Great Commission, and there's a story of Perpetua and Felicitas and what they went through as believers. They were Roman citizens that became Christians, and they were forced to go through the whole martyrdom of the Colosseum. And there's the story of Paul and Thecla as well, that in Maccabees there's a story of how the Most High God used the bloodthirsty, the entertainment and the graphic nature of the Colosseum and those kind of games, that there was a time, just like in the story of Paul and Thecla, how Thecla was some of the wild animals. The female lion, the lioness, protected her from the bears and the male lions and fought them off to protect her. And how they witnessed, the Roman people, they witnessed the miracles of God even in the Colosseum, that there were times where the Christians were protected supernaturally. And so they saw in that manner the true divinity of the Most High God working in and for the Christians, even in the certainty of death of the Colosseum. And there were times, like in one of the Maccabee stories, it talks about how many angels of God showed up to protect the Christians in the Colosseum when there was going to be a mass slaughter of them. And so, these kind of things can even be turned unto good. And so it's when unbelievers, when they're there to watch Christians being slaughtered, and yet they see the divinity of the Most High come forth and preserving and protecting Christians, that does wonders for turning your mindset around. Because when you witness a miracle like that, it's undeniable. And so these were the kind of things that occurred, and that helped inspire and helped to continue to build the faith, and that people knew that the incarnation of God into flesh was true through Christ, and that the apostles, that they were performing miracles. And so that's another reason why to study the Great Commission and the stories of the apostles going forth two by two, because there's many dozens of manuscripts that are like the book of Acts in the Bible, but talk about even the incredible story of how Andrew and Matthias converted the city of the man-eaters. How people don't know this story of this stronghold where the apostles were afraid to go to this city because the people there, they were cannibals. And it talked about how the travelers and those that came through, and how they would even send out their forces to abduct other peoples. They would bring back these people, gouge out their eyes, and then fatten them up like sheep or cattle. And then they would have an organized blood ritual where they would kill these people, drain their blood, and then divvy up the body parts for eating and consumption. And then they would feast on blood. And this was the kind of stuff that was going on in the ancient times. There was a living dragon, like Bel and the dragon, the story in the Apocrypha, that these people worshipped. And so, total satanic stronghold. and how God converted even those people and brought them out and turned that city into a city of believers. Incredible conversion, incredible obstacles that were overcome and that were encountered by the apostles of old. And these are stories that people don't know about. And so, I invite you to study. Even if you don't want to get the Great Commission series, you can read about them in the ante-Nicene testimonies of the church fathers.
Definitely amazing stories. Quickly running out of time, so I'll just get straight into our last point that we were going to read. Last article that, not really an article, but this is just something that probably everybody has seen. The common phrase that we see across the media and the commercial outlets is stay at home, stay safe. Stay at home and have your food delivered to you. Stay at home and watch your favorite show. Stay at home, stay at home, stay at home. I'm sure you've seen that too, right, Dan?
Yes, of course.
A world full of humans who are feeling safe and comfy in their homes, it's a trend in a bad direction.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the universal income becoming a real idea,
Mm-hmm.
and robots preparing to take over all the human labor jobs. The sci-fi concept of a dystopian civilization of people living in their homes while plugged into their machines is becoming a reality. And the ones in power are, of course, encouraging this, because once the populations are satisfied in their homes, they have free reign.
Right.
The world's their playground, and
Right.
they're using right now, their mastered method of order out of chaos to drive this agenda further and further to a reality.
Yes. Yes, and exactly what you're talking about. This is the Laodicean church. Those who are, comfortable in their madness and comfortable in their luxury, that stay at home, that don't go forth to study anything but just watch their TVs, that make their TV dinners or order their food, that are not connected to the realities of what's going on and where we are with regard to the season of the end.
Absolutely. There's just so much evil that is being done on the earth right now. And, we mentioned a lot of it. And I apologize to anyone who's sensitive to the things that, are going on. But they are really happening. These are real things that are happening in the earth. I saw a video of a pastor. Okay, just to end on a note that will keep you thinking. I saw a video of a pastor in an African church, and his family and him were thrown into the fire to be burned alive by jihadists, by Muslim jihadists, who were probably funded by, the synagogue of Satan. And this pastor, his legs were on fire. He was sitting in the fire, and he had his hands up on his knees, and he was just praying. And that was the end for him. But what an impact that had on me. I was just scrolling through my Facebook newsfeed and saw the video of persecution, and then that played, and I saw that man, a real man sitting in the fire being persecuted, a real Christian brother. And it just makes me really pray and hope that all of our lives and all of our deaths will just be to glorify the Most High. And that we can have that same faith, to have patience even into the death, that we'll confess faith. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for this, and I look forward to doing it again next month, and prayerfully we'll have peace and shalom.
Amen. Yes. And thank you, everybody in the chat. We love all of you as well, and we appreciate all of you joining us in fellowship. We are the ecclesia. So be the light. Go forth and carry the example and live your prayer. Be blessed all. Shalom.
Amen. Shalom.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. All of you, and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.
Thank you all for joining tonight. If we weren't able to answer your questions, or if you do have some questions, please feel free to join us on Friday. We're having an Ask Me Anything with Zen, and we always have time towards the end of the video for live questions, so please do join us there. We appreciate you joining tonight. Much love to you all, and shalom.